So thanks. Thank you for those who are already joining. It will take a bit of time since for people to gather around. So we'll start in a couple of minutes. In the meantime, I think I'll just fill a bit the gap with a background on why we did this webinar. We kind of, looked a bit around what people are talking about today, and obviously work from home and working remotely is a huge topic for everyone. But we noticed that teams, from a team perspective and from keeping that team united and collaborative and efficient, it's not that the good of an approach. So we decided to kind of deep dive there, and invited 5 amazing people to join us and share their opinions and their perspectives on how team management should work during this time. And so, yeah, I guess let's start a bit. Now, what's going to happen is that we will have a chat with our guests. We have all these questions ready, but the Q&A section will be open throughout the entire webinar. I will take a close look at it and do my best to answer all those questions until this ends. And yeah, but you can feel free to drop them at any time. It does not end with a classic 10-minute session of Q&A, so you can just drop those questions at any point throughout the roundtable. And yes, as I have mentioned before, we have 5 absolutely amazing guests joining us from all the different sectors, and I think once again from all around the world. So let me quickly introduce them one by one. Firstly, we have Liz Bazner, who is the Director of Digital at A&W Restaurants, which is an American chain of fast food restaurants that serves very yummy food, from what I've heard. Thanks, Liz, for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Next is Elena Bersadschi, the Global Growth Marketing Manager at Deliveroo, the online food delivery company. She was a guest on our People of Marketing podcast as well, so thanks for saying yes once again to us.
Thanks for inviting one more time.
Sure. Moving forward, we have Paulo Salomao, partner and executive creative director at King Ursa, a full-service studio that specializes in connections planning and content creation. Hi, Paulo, and thanks for doing this.
Hello, my pleasure.
And we also have, from King Ursa, we have Eric, Paulo's partner. Hi, Eric, and thank you for sharing this two-perspective view.
For sure, thanks for having us.
And last but not least, we have Carmen, Popa-Nemoiu, who has agreed to share her wisdom as well. She is the Senior Marketing Manager at Revolut, the British financial technology company that offers banking services. Carmen and I have known each other for a while. We worked together before, so thanks so much for saying yes, Carmen.
Thanks for the invite as well.
Okay, awesome. Thank you everyone who has joined in the meantime. I think we are ready to kick it off. So the way I kind of wanted to start this is, with a quick summary of the things that everyone has done lately to adjust to this new context and new way of working. So let's start with the food industry first. So Liz, what about your team? How kind of did the whole workflow change in your team, and what were the first steps that you took to adjust your process and context?
So it was interesting for us because we actually did not have a work from home policy or a flex policy at all. And so basically overnight, we suddenly transitioned from all coming to a physical space to working remotely. We had a few new people on our team as well, a couple people who only started in the last few months. So they were still kind of getting up to speed with what their daily responsibilities were going to be. And then very quickly, a lot of those changed. So I think for us, you know, we had some hiccups in terms of getting people on board with using technology. One of my tips for people, which I am breaking right now because my camera is broken, but I do think that it helps when you're able to do video calls for sure. It makes a big difference. It's just easier to read body language and things like that. But I think the most important thing has been just communicating, not just through email, you know, working on Google Docs, which is not something that we did as an organization before, being able to have chat open during the day, and then also just respecting that people's job responsibilities have shifted a lot. And so everyone's kind of trying to get adjusted to the new normal. And I think it's helpful to have patience with each other.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, I think this whole context kind of forced everyone to adjust fast, and everything that was kind of before you were just probably, you know, everyone was saying was a bit wary of trying new things. Now it was kind of forcing to do and say. So yeah, that's really interesting. Um, so Elena, what could you tell me a bit about your team and how it's handling this at Deliveroo? Kind of were the main shifts in direction that you took right away?
Yeah, so we were quite lucky from the work perspective, like job responsibilities and stuff, purely because we had, you know, certain processes established already, you know, way before the lockdown began. Just a background to this, I am working on a global team, meaning that we are responsible for all the local markets. So there was a lot of communication remotely going on already. So once we already, you know, like started working from home, nothing really changed from that perspective. Probably we added some additional, you know, stand-up meetings, you know, just like to catch up at the beginning of the day. What changed a lot was on a personal level. So we had clear communication, you know, coming from top down as well. Be compassionate towards yourself, and be mindful how you use your time and how, you know, like take care of your mental health. So we introduced, you know, like lots of fun talks as well, lots of fun meetings. And on top of that, it was actually like a direction from the senior leadership. The fact that you are working from home, it doesn't mean that you can be on call all the time. And the fact that you get the Slack message, for example, at 11 p.m., it doesn't mean that you have to answer. So that actually made it easy to start with the lockdown. But yeah, personally, people were affected differently. Not everyone is a fan of lockdowns, but yeah, everyone definitely became very aware of each other's mental health to begin with, way before the work itself.
Yeah, it's interesting because I noticed that too, you know, that it made us a bit more empathetic because it was easy to understand that even though kind of it's hard to understand because at first you're thinking everyone's staying home, what's the big deal? But it gets tiring, and we're starting even in our small team, we're starting to kind of take half days off every now and then just to like close the laptop and do whatever makes us a bit, you know, forget about everything. So yeah, I totally know what you mean. Okay, so now I wanted to kind of go a bit into the before and afters. Now, both you, Elena, and Liz touched a bit on the subject, but now I wanted to ask Paulo on about, you know, King Ursa. How did it look like before the whole COVID-19 craziness? So, you know, how remote or flexible were you guys?
We definitely our case is that we from the beginning we established that we wanted to create a very strong culture in here, and I know, you know, a lot of agencies talk about culture, and I mean companies do talk about culture a lot. But to Eric and I, when we started our business, we wanted to create a space where really people wanted to come to. Like, that was the number one thing we wanted, right? Like, to people to feel like they actually wanted to be here with other people. They're like-minded, and you know, that sense of tribalism has been and has always been strong here. And we put it like from design of furniture to, you know, not having boardroom tables, to have a band set up here, to for anybody to play anytime. So it's a pretty very very art heavy space that people, that attracts the right people with the right mentality. That said, it's always been, I don't think we ever enforced to say, hey, don't work from home. You have to come. It's always been an untold, I guess, rule that we want to be here, and we want people to want to be here, and they want it, and they were part of it. But there were times where people there are times that people do ask to take a day to go work from home, or a couple of days, because they're designing something or working a proposal or working on a strategy, and they want to just be on their own. So it's always been it was never a problem before. And so moving, when all this happened, it was, to all of us, was extremely natural to, no communication was broken. I'm sorry not to jump too much into the post, but yeah, the before has always been, a very open space. So, it's, we are lucky, I guess, this way, because there wasn't a rule to stay or go. Like it was open, but most of the time they were always encouraged to be here, I guess.
Yeah, what you mentioned, it makes me change next question that I had prepared for Eric. So now, because you mentioned, and it really sounds like it's a really cool environment, and it's a really tight community, and you guys really genuinely like each other. So I guess my question is, Eric, do you think that part of the culture and that the funness of your office made it a bit harder to kind of stay at home isolated?
Oh, yeah, sure. But it's interesting, like in our movement, we're a service company. Right? Our thinking and our design and our strategy and our analytics, those are the products that people are purchasing from us. And to properly operate a company like that, efficiency has to be woven through everything. So from day one, we'd always had that element of digital connectedness, how we end up delivering, getting approved, like all those pieces were integrated heavily into how we operated. The nicety around it was the environment. So everyone, and like, how do you differentiate yourself, not only as a recruitment strategy, but also in employee health, is to create somewhere, like Paulo said, that people love to come to. So when they have that one small element removed, it's interesting, when we started to categorize answers to these questions, there are a few things that were brought up where you begin writing down formally some of the changes that you've made, which felt pretty intuitive and natural to us. So the notion of how do you extract what a physical feeling of comfort and, like, let's say home might be in a dialogue, when a meeting kicks off, let's not just start talking about business. The first couple minutes into every meeting, intentionally, we kind of do this too, even here, is, like Paulo said, we have no boardroom tables. Remove formalities so that people can feel comfortable about what they're doing and allow them to be themselves. So when we get on a call, even if it's a half-hour quick call, get everyone laughing. Start talking about something outside of the work, so that one thing that might be a recall that you've experienced for the past 5 years of working with King Ursa is still present, even though we're just through a digital connection.
Yeah, that's I totally know what you mean, and I feel like in calls now, I've noticed this, that even we normally, since we're all the time together at the office, when we do start the meeting, we start the meeting. But now, because we don't have those chats at the coffee or during whatever breakfast, we cannot start the call. Everyone has some sort of story they want to share, so we
and let it,
tend
right?
to make them you just make it
let it happen
longer.
It's more natural. And it's funny, nobody's late for meetings now. So like you can't really, it's not that you just took too long to get there. The quick click in and the efficiency that comes from that allows you to feel like the meeting every time. So it's probably been the most natural transition of maintaining culture and the human connection.
Yeah, that's a very good point. Thanks. Okay. Now the next question is for Carmen. What about you guys? What about at Revolut? What were the steps that you took to adapt?
Well, For us, firstly, it was not so hard to adapt. We work from home, especially in Romania, because we are a small team. So we are only 5 people, so we work quite a lot remote. So maybe like 2 days a week we work from home. So for us, the impact was not that big. We do have more calls, so we have more daily things, one-on-ones, like with all the team members. So we are trying to stay connected and keep aligned with everything. But I think the kudos here for Revolut goes to our workplace experience teams. So we have an amazing team that actually took care of the welfare of the employees. So basically, they actually created a dedicated Slack channel where they're sharing on a daily basis, like tips, what to cook, what movies to watch. They're like creating different contests. Actually, they're a few times a day, they're creating Hangouts links, call links. So basically you can join for coffee and they're like, hey guys, it's coffee break, just, like hop in and let's chit chat. So they are doing an amazing job here. We actually have an Instagram account where they're encouraging everybody to share, their work from home office, and they're doing a lot of things. So for us, it is easier on one side in communicating with the teams internally, but I think, it's not easy to stay all day in. So I think on this side, the workplace experience team does a great job. So
Yeah, it sounds like they're really supportive, and all those ideas, I'm sure they help. Just any chance to talk to people. It feels like I'm just frustrated in my own any chance to talk to people, but it's true. I guess we're all feeling the same thing. Yeah, okay. So the next big chapter that I wanted to touch on is collaboration and the actual processes of work. So I guess what's interesting is that for marketing teams, we're pretty digital in terms of an industry. We're not that fixed on a desk and a laptop and staying together and working together. But still, I feel like we collaborate a lot and we need each other. So that's why I want to talk about these processes. And I'd like to start with you, Elena. I wanted to ask you about I understand you're a global team and you were used to work together, but even before COVID, what are your tips for working efficiently and ensuring that everyone is aligned and has the access to all the information they need?
Interesting, you're saying that we, like, as people are used to, work a lot digitally. From my experience, digital is good for business as usual, but lots of things can fall through the cracks anyway. So one of the things that actually I would advise lots of marketeers to do is have still face-to-face meetings. And this is what we continue doing over the lockdown as well. So do not cancel your meetings. And if something is not clear, do not waste time on typing and doing the Slack thing. Take the time for half an hour and go through any challenges or issues you have face to face and talk them through. And I find this to be way more efficient than just simply, like hiding behind the laptop. Very often when you also write, you cannot really transmit this emotion and like what you actually think, so things can be misunderstood, especially when you work with multiple cultures. So yeah, the face-to-face meetings are important, and it's something that, as I said already, I would recommend everyone. Our best practices that we carried forward is again making sure that we document and have like the meetings, and we document how like our plans as well, so that you could refer back to them. And this has been like best practice that the entire company has been following. And the good thing is that there's a very high transparency among the teams, so you can easily get access to any document if you really want. Like everything is very well categorized, and then everything happens, like you just tag people and you comment and you just like continue talking to people, not only on Slack, but like in all the Google Docs and all the other tools that we're using. So yeah, communication is a very, very big deal, and it's up to the manager to actually, continue pushing teams to talk rather than just like go silent in their rooms behind the laptops.
Yeah, I can totally relate to that. Okay. Now, in terms of tools, especially for content planning, approvals, and as client reviews, looking at you, Eric, what do you use here? What's your tool stack for collaboration, especially with clients, but I guess now a lot internally as well?
Yeah, and even to go off of what Ellen is saying, some people might be listening saying, well, it must be nice to have a company that sort of started within the past decade. We don't have a lot of legacies of large organizations that needed to pivot and get restructured. From day one, we had also incorporated very digital forward mentality and all of the interaction of how we work, from Google Business direct through, where provided for inline feedback, auto version controlling, direct access within server connectivity. So in that statement of, as long as everything's well organized and people aren't getting frustrated trying to get access, that's been the foundation of how the system's been set up here. But then additional tools, and here's a little Planable call out of having certain categorized aspects where it's not just about what the individuals are working on, but how can we section certain, either it's access granting for certain documents that have password control, or direct links for editable versus viewable, which Google allows for. But then when we're getting into, like we do everything from television commercials, brand strategies through to content for social platforms, using those which have been in our realm for probably a decade of our career, has allowed that to just simply integrate. So one, for how people are working on the day-to-day and the digital opportunities for updating, sharing, connecting, to the chat aspects where you feel that you start using too many and then people get lost, but as long as they're used for the right purpose, Slack within Slack groups that are associated directly to a job code, so individuals know the purpose of that chat and don't pollute it, to then internal ones of like King Ursa internal, where I would say that it is probably the furthest from a business conversation that's used for emotional connection. And there's like the what you're grateful for comes up every morning at the office, and it's awesome. But then for our clients to see, where when we first started using Google, I think it took maybe about a month for our clients to adapt to that format, because they've always felt that we're a Microsoft company, so we have to use PowerPoint, and Keynote and PowerPoint were an issue to begin with. That the centralization of it being easily accessible allowed us within this, for those tools to just naturally, it's nothing changed on our side for that. And again, it's because we've been open for 6 years, so we were able to integrate that from day one. So knowing larger companies or companies with legacy, that might be more difficult. But it's surprising how quickly it adapts when we have that experience with our clients who do have legacy systems, and see that it's actually a lot easier than you think.
Yeah, it's really interesting that you said that, because I've honestly seen that it's worth the fight. It might not seem like it is at first, but once you do fight for whatever small piece of collaboration tool you can get, and not saying it has to be Planable, but anything,
efficiencies, right?
Yeah, and it really adds up in time. It's not just a nice to have, especially in this time and day. So, okay, so in terms of process, Carmen, I know you said that you guys were already kind of prepared and well adjusted for this, but even before COVID-19, what would you say is kind of the most difficult process of marketing that's hard to do remote?
Well, for sure, partnerships. So here I find it quite difficult. It's not, in these times, nobody can be reliable. So you understand these things. So we had partnerships, they cannot deliver what they promised because of COVID, and they cannot communicate anymore. And as well, collaborations, for example, with different influencers that, we are paying them to write or things like that, to, you know, create content, and they're not serious, you know, they are not, you know, delivering on time. But, you know, it's understandable, we are like human beings, and, you know, everybody's, you know, has their own issues or problems. So yeah, I think these two are the two things that we cannot control in these times, and we find it the most difficult.
Yeah, and I think that might also happen because email is getting so busy for everyone now, right? Because everyone is sending newsletters and emails, and everyone wants something from you. So I guess that inbox is getting pretty busy. Yeah. Okay. Now, Paulo, back to you. What is your one best step for marketing collaboration at the moment? So from Eric, we got that it's good to push and find some tools. What's yours?
So I guess I fall back into my influence, like in my role is I'm always falling uh, falling back to the I tend to fall back to basics, and being an art side, I've always believed in really like Elena mentioned before, like we talk a lot about here about walking to the desk and and talking, and and this happens here a lot. You see people walking around and talking and whatnot. So in this day and age, like when with this things in a situation that we are right now, I think there's a lot of focus on the right tools, of course, to help communication and efficiency. I tend to say, don't forget. Sometimes it's I push for a phone call. Like it's you get the phone call and get a couple people on a phone call, and change the medium a little bit and make a fast call. If you have to talk to someone, try not to get caught into the typing on chat too much and over explaining or long emails. So collaboration, I believe, is a good collaboration in any sense is really getting to getting to the point that you want to get as fast as fast as possible without compromising opinions and contacts, right? So I think, yeah, just simplify. I think go back to being if you can, unfortunately, if you can walk to the person's table, give a phone call and talk, and and get people to a lot of times we remind some of people here too and say, hey, give the person a phone call. Yeah, it's a 5-minute chat. You get that solved, and and let's move on. So yeah, I think that helps a lot.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, because it's because it sometimes takes so much time to collaborate or get reviews or feedback. People tend to demonize the review process or the person giving the feedback, not the process in itself or the way it's being done. And I feel like a lot of the time teams end up cutting that process and intentionally leaving people out of the collaboration, for the sake of efficiency. But that has an impact on progress at the end, right? It's not going to be as good as if more brains would have been involved. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Okay. Now, a few of you already mentioned this about the written communication, which I think is a problem as well. So, sometimes a lot of chat and so little verbal communication is hard to understand. It may seem snarky when it's not, it may seem unhuman or cold or whatever. So I wonder, it might be a weird question, but I wonder if you've ever thought about any guidelines here. So, for example, Carmen, how about you guys? Do you have it like any kind of company wiki on how to talk via chat or anything?
No, we actually don't. We have a lot of emojis though.
Okay.
We have that, yeah, but in these times, to be frank, like I prefer to jump in a call rather than going back and forth. I just like, hey, are you free? Let's have a short call, and it's better, like, in order not to mislead or talk. So yeah, I prefer. So this is what I'm doing, like with my team. We just jump into a call and straight to the subject.
Yeah, sounds like a good approach. So on that, I wanted to ask Liz actually, because there's always this question between when is it kind of a topic to chat about and when it's important to have a meeting. So how do you choose between those two? How do you decide which one is the right fit, Liz?
I think that's a really interesting question. And for our work environment, I was just trying to do the math in my head. We probably have a 50-year age difference between some of the people in our office. So I think that for maybe people who are a little bit younger, who are in their 20s and 30s, we're much more, we've got multiple text chains going on. We've got our Slack conversations. And so I think we probably tend to be a little bit more casual and a little bit more immediate. My team is pretty young, and I agree with what was said earlier that I don't want someone to wait until we have a meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. If you have a quick question, like let's just move on and get to business. I think we've also found out, I work on quite a few cross-functional teams, and meetings with more than 10 people is very difficult. We've got varying levels of comfort with technology and skill, and we found that sometimes if you spend 10, 15, 20 minutes just getting everybody onboarded and making sure that everything is working, you're spending a lot of time on things that aren't necessarily moving the business forward. We have tried to keep our standing meetings. The first couple of weeks, those kind of fell off the calendar. And we really found that it was beneficial to have some sense of like a normal routine. If you have a meeting every Monday, at 1 p.m., we've tried to keep those as long as they're still pertinent to the business. But it certainly has been an adjustment. And I think the thing that I have missed the most are really our brainstorming sessions. I knew that I loved whiteboards and Post-its and being able to kind of move things around visually and spatially. And so my husband, I'm sure, doesn't appreciate that our living room wall has turned into a little brainstorming session. There's Post-its all over our house.
I tend to do that too. I used to do that every time I had some sort of idea. I needed a flip chart or some sort of big area to just write on. I guess it helps the brain flow, right?
It does for sure. So now I'm seeing the dogs are tracking them throughout the house. So little
okay.
bits of pink paper everywhere.
It's still brainstorming. It's still collaborative, right? Okay. Awesome. So I guess next, after collaboration, I obviously want to go a bit into productivity as well. And I think, we have one question in Q&A regarding this, so I'll trade mine for this one. So someone is asking the guys at King Ursa, from an agency perspective, do you feel like working remotely helps creativity or does it hurt it a bit? How are you doing this?
I think the only time we can think that if it would that would hurt creativity in a sense, I guess, would be when you have a teams that need to be together in the room and and do a lot of powwow with ideas and back and forth and whatnot. And sometimes you have more than two, and here we end up having an art director with a strategist or creative director with an account director. We mix quite a bit, so that I think you could say you might miss a little bit of that, the one-on-one, and having the person in the room and doing some work. But a lot of times that's just one element of coming up with ideas and being creative, I guess, in that sense. There's a lot of it too. Is them being apart and going to their own minds, computers, desk or room or whatever, and doing their own thing. So I think when you have a team that has a lot of integration, if people are used to working together quite a bit, you're used to that process, so that I think you can still do that for a while via camera, via conference, and have those chats because it's so comfortable with the person that you can have that. So I wouldn't believe that is hurting a lot. I think still we're very believers in the human connection in here. We do believe that, you know, being in person, you know, does not in our industry is still required. It's still, you know, we want to be, you know, it does make sense to be together a lot, and there are differences in many different ways. But because, and I'm looking at this with the lens of, you know, a temporary solution, and seeing as a temporary solution right now for a month, you know, or two, that we have to do this, even if it comes again, you know, at the end of the year, that has to happen again, that, you know, we're again, you know, secluded. I don't see it as really disrupting, you know, creativity that bad, you know.
Yeah. There are still tips and tricks you can try, right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you're going to add a layer to that, I'm looking at like strategic components of how you end up doing brainstorming and creativity within that realm. We've been going through one exercise where we've built a lot of websites in the past, and you usually go through a UX where you're identifying all the different user flows of how someone's intending to complete a task, and then you start building the wireframes of the website around that. Using mind mapping tools that in a structured way, the same way that you would do sticky notes within a room of a large scale, allowing the conversation to organically flow, as long as you're identifying, and this is a great tool to use, as long as you're identifying the agenda and the purpose of it, you allow the discussion to play out, and you have a moderator of some sort that's also an individual that can be adding to the conversation, and allow it to pivot off by continually pull it back. And then you have parking lot pieces that play out. So in that portion of it, when you're establishing the strategy or business plan, or constructing some form of brand purpose, the mind mapping, we've almost found, and that's when you can have 6 people that are starting to have multiple discussions and supporting one another within a meeting. You then have a tangible output as a PDF version of the full discussion laid out. But it's actually improved some productivity within an hour and a half meeting. At times would have taken 3 meetings to have, because it can just naturally start going. And this is why I said it's different, where creativity and the emotional side of it, like that has to have that emotional connection. Creativity and the connections planning side of it is really interesting on that side.
Since you mentioned mind mapping, I have to ask now, what tools are you using for that?
The mind mode is a great one.
Okay.
And
I just discovered Miro there. So I'm redoing our onboarding flows. So I've used that for kind of very complex flows and charts. So yeah.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Next, Liz, I wanted to ask you about the work schedule, right? Because you know, it's obviously work from home most times it cannot work as strict as the office life does. You know, not 9 to 5 is just, it might differ a bit. So I'm wondering what you are encouraging your employees to do, to stick to a fixed schedule, or to mix it up and work whenever they want to.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to consider. And I think we had probably been working from home for about 2 weeks when I realized that I was working from about 7 or 7:30 in the morning, sometimes until 8 or 8:30 at night. I just didn't have good boundaries for myself. And it felt like there was so much to be done, and so much uncertainty, that I think there was quite a few people on our team who were kind of burning the candle at both ends. We've also had to just change the amount that we're communicating. On my team, we really kind of communicate to 2 customers. We've got, you know, the traditional restaurant customer, but we're also a franchisor. So we're trying to also guide our restaurant owners through this process with news that changes, you know, multiple times every day. And we have restaurants in multiple time zones. Not quite as extensive as some of the global teams who are on this call, but we do have people who are on the West Coast, and you know, our head office is working in East Coast time. So it really was on an individual level. A member of our team who does most of our communication drafts, she's a morning person. I don't understand it, but she loves getting up early. And she'll take a break for a few hours in the afternoon, go walk the dogs outside, get some fresh air, and then she'll come back in the evening and kind of finish out her day. I prefer getting started a little later and then working a little bit later, but I think it's been really important as we, you know, try to adjust from what was a very traditional work schedule. You know, we've actually found that when you're working from home, that the lines blur quite a bit, and it can be easy to just sit in front of your screen all day. We've had some nice weather here lately, so I got myself a little portable desk from Amazon, and I've been working out on my back deck in the afternoons if the weather permits.
Sounds beautiful.
Yeah, so there was a time when I realized that we had to actually remind members of our team, like, you should go outside. If you haven't been outside in a few days, just go sit outside for a little bit and see how it makes you feel.
Get that vitamin D just a bit, right? Okay, thanks so much for that answer, Liz. I feel like it's counterintuitive, but I think that's actually the biggest struggle for everyone right now, to just close that laptop and stop working. It's just, you never know when to stop, right? So in terms, going back a bit to productivity and this whole remoteness, I wanted to ask you, Carmen, as a marketer and a company so used to this way of working, what would you say is like the biggest lesson to be learned from you guys that have been doing this for a while?
The bigger working right remotely, right from home.
Yeah.
Biggest. So it's, I think, as Liz was saying, you can be actually more productive from home. So I think the fear of, you know, as an employer is like, if, you know, my employees are working from home, they will just, you know, watch Netflix and they will not work. But it's not like that. So same as Liz, like when I'm working from home, so I don't even go out of bed, and I just take my laptop and start working, you know, or, you know, or if even after hours, if, you know, if I'm watching a movie that's not that interesting, I just open my laptop and, you know, like start digging and seeing what else I can do. So I think that, you know, like people can actually work more from home and in the same time be happy, you know, for working from home. So I think this is a big, you know, takeaway, and maybe for the future they will implement this as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Thank you. Okay, now my next topic is motivation. Because I feel that can vary a lot during this time, right? It can go from 100 to 0 in a matter of seconds. So firstly, I want to ask you, Elena, first of all, how has this been for you as a professional, and then for your team, you know, keeping it all together?
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie. I have a feeling that my motivation was on a roller coaster since everything has begun. At the beginning, I felt very guilty about it. I was like, oh my God, like I need to get things done, and I just cannot find the strength or the energy to do it. But then I realized, and I started reading about it more, it's actually a natural response to changes, to these small little emotional shocks. So it's very important to remember that it's okay sometimes not to be motivated. So for me, it was just this realization that helped actually accept it and then learn how to deal with it. So now, for example, what I do with my team is that, you know, I always say, hey, if you're not motivated during this hour, just close your laptop and do something else instead, until you find back the motivation. If you need to go for a walk, or if you need to, I don't know, like rest for a bit. It's all about accepting, you know, like that people that you work with are adults and responsible. Try not to micromanage them, and trust that they're gonna do their work in time on their own terms. And I, you know, like I second what the guys were saying earlier, is that, you know, in the end, everyone has their own schedules. So as long as you trust the team, everything is going to be all right. So yeah, these are the main things that I've noticed about motivation, and it actually works. And funny thing, like a funny fact, they've done just now recently a survey in the UK, and apparently only 7% of people want to go back to the old times.
Really?
Yes. So it actually shows, that offices are already like a thing of the past. So I'm looking forward to see how the workplace and workforce is going to change in the future for sure.
That scares me, honestly. I mean, I'm all for working from home, but I want to get back to the office and interact with people. So that's scary.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the personality in the end. Like how you can adjust. I think a balance and the mix is very useful to have. So it's really dependent on the company how they're going to be approaching it in the future, which I'm really, really looking forward to see how this is going to change.
Yeah, I'm really curious about that too. And going back a bit, because you mentioned, trusting the team, the guys mentioned it too. And now I wanted to talk a bit about transparency. And I'm going to ask you this, Liz, because I think that during this time, because there's such a level of uncertainty for everyone right now, and not only about the world but also about the company. How's the company doing? What's it going to do? What are they going to do to survive? Are my benefits being taken away? All these questions, and people want to know how the company is doing, but at the same time, you don't necessarily want to kind of burden and overwhelm all the employees with the bottom line of the company, right? So what's the balance between these two, between transparency and still, not affecting people's motivation and headspace?
I think it's a really delicate balance. Our leadership team has tried to err on the side of over communicating, at least to start with. We were hosting webinars for our corporate office. In the beginning, it was 5 days a week, and then we went down to 3, and now we're sort of leveled out at Tuesdays and Thursdays. And I think that was good. It felt a bit excessive at times, but I think that especially for some of our newer team members, it was comforting for them to hear, even when we didn't have the answers to questions. There's been a lot of questions in the US about small business loans and the government bailout. And to be honest, the government doesn't know what those are yet. So we certainly are having a hard time keeping up with all of the details on some of these very complicated financial matters. But for our team members at the office, we've been very honest about wanting to keep everybody on board. We haven't done any layoffs. We haven't cut any benefits. We haven't done anything like that. But we did ask people to make sure that they were watching what they were spending. We had some conferences scheduled for later this year, and our travel budgets have been suspended for now. And I think that although it can sound a little bit daunting at first, that it was reassuring for our employees to hear, like, we're really looking at what we're spending, so that we can make sure that we are still taking care of our people. And that might change things going forward. There might be a few conferences we can't go to. There might be a few trips that get canceled, but we still have retirement accounts. We still have jobs. And we have been very upfront, if we don't know the answer to a question, to say, we don't know that right now, but we're going to address that and look into it.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I guess I read this one piece of news that I found fascinating, that this one CEO of a company, I don't remember the name of the company, but all they did is just organize this Zoom link where he would just be there like an hour a day or something like that, and people could just drop in and ask questions if they wanted to, or just chat. And I don't think he knew that much to say, or just had any information, but just the level, the idea that people could ping him if they needed to, builds that kind of trust, right? And people understand that, a company is going through changes, but it's still there for its employees. So yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think this just happened yesterday, actually. And I believe it was mentioned a little bit earlier during this call. Our CEO let us know that he's going to take Friday afternoon off. And he said, you know what, I'm stressed out. None of us have been sleeping. I need to go outside. I need to be in the garden. He's like, I'll be available until noon on Fridays. And then after that, I'm going to take some time off. And he really encouraged us to say, hey, just because you can't go anywhere doesn't mean that you do need to be available all the time. So I think that's a very good, sort of lead by example of him saying, I'm gonna be offline for a few hours, and I think people will feel more comfortable following suit now that he's kind of set that example.
I think that's such a cool example, because I fear that many team leaders, not to mention CEOs, are kind of usually scared to show their own vulnerability first, right? So they are being empathetic, but they're not showing that they are suffering. So that kind of it feels a lot more human when they do. So I feel that's a terrific example. Okay, so we've gone a bit ahead of schedule, so as I was expecting. So I just want to ask two more big chunks. The first thing is to go a bit on the positive side, funny stories. And I guess why I wanted to touch this is because so many things are happening now on people's screens. So many meetings get awkward or weird at some point. So I think everyone has at least one funny story of one call that went wrong. So Liz, I ended with you. I'm going to continue with you. What's your one funny story from this whole period?
We've had a couple of things that have happened, and I think most of it has to do around, spouses who are both trying to work from home, or spouses with children who are trying to work from home. I have a coworker, and he has 6 children, all under the age of 15, and they're all in the house together right now. And one of his sons has gotten into their Halloween costumes, and he waits until his dad is on a Zoom call and then dresses up and kind of walks around in the back. And his dad, it took him a few tries to realize what was happening. And so it was funny. We were seeing, Ghostbusters and Jurassic Park happening while his dad was trying to talk about architecture design of restaurants. And it was a nice breath of fresh air. So it's nice to see the kids showing some creativity like that.
I feel like I want to meet that kid. He seems like he's very fun and does not care about whatever else is happening. So
he was having a great time.
That's awesome. Okay, next, Eric, why don't you tell us any pets hijacking stories or kids or anything else?
It's funny, we were making that joke, like, not that there's anything wrong with vegans, but if if someone's a vegan or someone does CrossFit, everyone knows that they do it. Seems the same way with dogs, where out of nowhere we found out like over half of our staff have cats. It's like the cats are coming out of the woodworks, all the cat owners. So there have been more cat walk-bys just going right through, unexpected throughout the calls, which is a nice bit of levity throughout, what might be a stressful meeting. And then the other ones that have, fortunately for us, been neutral to positive are the unexpected notifications that someone didn't turn off when they're doing a screen share, which perhaps should be rule number 1 across the board. Make sure your notifications are off. So a couple cute moments that could have gone offside really quick there. But yeah, that's where we're playing.
Yeah, I've seen those happening. They happen to me as well. It's not pleasant, I gotta say. So yeah. Okay, Eric, you're laughing in the background, so I want to hear your story.
Oh, you mean Paulo? Yeah,
Paulo, sorry.
I can't recall any. The only thing I can recall right now is that we're all, one of our employees has a 2-year-old, and he's quite the I guess like every other 2-year-old, does not respond to commands and does whatever he wants anytime he wants to. I have a 2-year-old too, so I know how it is. It's just funny how he's constantly just coming to the screen or has a computer beside his dad, so he can just bang on it like an old computer dad and just pretend he's working, or getting plants and just like destroying plants in the house. And him and his wife had to work as well. So it's funny sometimes. It's just like, guys, gotta go. I got these. He's destroying stuff right now.
Maybe he genuinely wants to contribute and you're just not hearing him out. Maybe he had something
I
to
know.
put on that mind map, right?
I asked before, I say, you should start counting some hours for brainstorming and start charging your clients for it. It's definitely contributing to the vibe.
I'm sure. Okay, next, Carmen, what's been your biggest distraction? Any weird things?
I think here the joke is on me because I have a puppy. So I'm the one who's making others laugh because he's most of the time attacking me, like bringing the toys and things like that. Now he's like, just like Waku, watching him, hoping he's not going to do something. But yeah, you can see like suddenly he comes with a toy and he just jumps on me. Yeah.
Yeah, I know him from your Instagram and he seems very, very active and not at all a fan of your calls.
Yeah, exactly. And before this call, for example, I just had to make sure that I remove all the toys from the room because for sure he would have brought some.
Well, that would have been fun. It would have been fun, I have to say.
Well, not when you have to be serious. Like when he bites your like foot and you need to be serious in the call and you cannot tell him like go away or shoo. Yeah. So
yeah. Well, I wish I had a pet. It sounds like fun.
Trust me that in quarantine, it's not nice to have a pet.
Okay.
It is, but it's stressful as well. Yeah.
I'll keep that tip in mind. Okay, Elena, how about you?
I didn't have that many distractions, but I do have a very funny colleague. He took it as a habit to come up dressed during the meetings. So like it can be one of the most serious meetings in the world and he's gonna come dressed in a scuba diving costume, like fully dressed, or he's gonna come up dressed as a judge, or his recent one was spa look, so with the towel wrapped around his head with like mask, cucumbers, like robe. And it actually is very cool because he's actually looking after finance on my team, so he's quite high up, and it just like talking about starting a meeting in a more less stressful way. He's definitely achieving that, and he just makes everyone else be more creative about meetings and just release the stress right before the serious topic on finances begins during the coronavirus. But yeah, something that more people started doing as well afterwards because they got inspired by it. Yeah, that's a funny thing that is happening on a daily basis with us.
It sounds really, really fun. Okay, so that was kind of the funny light part of this webinar. We only have 3 minutes left, so I will try to end it with the one question that we have in the Q&A. So someone asked, what was the most surprising thing that you liked about work from home? And this is for anyone who has the first idea.
I could say one. So for me, the most surprising thing was to learn that I'm actually more of an introvert rather than an extrovert. So when you talk to me and like in the social setting, I'm very outgoing, but actually I started enjoying being alone, reflecting on, like myself and my habits and what I do on a daily basis. So definitely after the lockdown ends, I'm going to have some very good learnings to take with me and hopefully carry forward. But yeah, that was a very interesting learning about myself.
Yeah, that sounds great. Honestly, I enjoyed it at first too, quite a bit. It felt comforting in a weird sense. Anyone else? What did you guys like about work from home and that was surprising?
I'd say on our side with the agency, it was just the way we've operated. We've probably had one of the busiest quarters we've had in the history of King Ursa, and productivity has increased. So it seems that a lot has been going through, and with what feels like less energy or hiccups or mistakes. So it's been an interesting learning experience. Again, it's like Elena said, that we hope that we can transfer over to the new world whenever that comes.
Maybe it's because they don't have a band singing room at home.
Right.
Maybe that's why.
Possible.
Okay. Anyone else got some last minute ideas on this side of surprisingly fun things working from home?
I think for me, I have gotten to work with some people that I wouldn't normally work with, just because we've had some projects pop up. So I've been working a lot closer with our like our restaurant operations team and our finance team. The main project we're all working on is delivery, and these are people that I would not normally have this much interaction with. And we've actually started doing little happy hours. So we'll do FaceTime happy hours, and we'll talk about business for maybe 20 or 25 minutes. And then it's been really nice to get to know them. One of them is relatively new to the corporate team overall, and it's been a really good time talking to him. And if we were at the office, we probably wouldn't be working on the same team. He's on a different floor. It just feels farther away. And so I'm hoping that that sort of increased communication and sort of sense that everybody's on the same team continues.
Yeah, I think that was one of the questions that unfortunately we'll have to skip, but one of the things that I wanted to ask you all is how you'll see all of these new habits or new insights that we've gathered during this time take place after the whole lockdown hopefully ends at some point. So yeah, it's thanks for asking that too, Liz. Okay, so I guess we have reached the end. I want to thank absolutely everyone who has joined, and you guys, the panelists. Thank you for taking the time to do this, and for all the awesome answers you've given, and of course for all the funny jokes. You've, I think you've made people's weekends that's getting close a lot better.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Miruna.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys. Bye-bye.